I'm Lauren, 26, trapped in a family where my dad's girlfriend tried to rule me, forcing her control over my life and siblings with an iron grip after Mom's passing left us vulnerable. Growing up, I became the backbone for my younger brothers and sisters, shielding them from chaos, but her intrusion turned our home into a battleground, blaming me for resisting as she imposed herself as a false authority. The weight of her dominance left me isolated, battling to protect my siblings while grappling with the emotional toll of her overreach, a silent war that tested my strength daily. Before I tell you how I ended up reclaiming my power, share where you're watching from in the comments, like if you've faced family overreach, and subscribe for more tales of reclaiming control. Let's step back to when this dominance began. A quiet fight against her overbearing ways that sparked my rebellion against her rule. The spring. I started college, my world in Portland, Oregon, fell apart when Mom passed away, leaving a stillness that redefined our family. Uncle Robert, my dad's younger brother with his calm presence, became our legal guardian, moving us into his cozy home on a street lined with blooming cherry trees, where the distant hum of the Willamette River blended with the breeze. My siblings, Tom, 26, Jake, 23, Lily, 12, and Sam, 10, depended on me as the steady force keeping us together, a role I'd grown into since childhood amid the uncertainty. Dad, Michael, had been a ghost for over a decade, his drinking estranging him with only rare slurred calls. But as I settled into dorm life and part-time work, he reappeared, eager to reconnect, especially with my younger siblings. His new girlfriend, Jessica, a woman in her 30s with a too-bright smile, soon followed, imposing herself as a stepmom despite our self-reliant family. Her arrival clashed with our unity, and the weight of her dominance sparked a silent war that would shape my fight for freedom. It began a few weeks later when Dad first brought her by. His old pickup truck rumbled into Uncle Robert's driveway, tires crunching gravel, and Jessica stepped out, her laughter slicing through the quiet afternoon. "I've missed you kids," Dad said, his voice rough but earnest, handing Lily and Sam a bag of candy. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching as Tom and Jake exchanged wary glances. Jessica added, "I'm here to help you all," her tone dripping with a forced warmth that felt out of place. Uncle Robert was away on a work trip out of state, leaving me to hold the fort, and I'd taken charge, cooking meals, overseeing homework, keeping us on track. Her presence grew over time, her mom act unsettling as she fussed over the kids' school bags and offered advice I didn't ask for. My confidence wavered under her patronizing stare, anxiety creeping in as she chipped away at my role. A couple of months after that, her intrusion deepened one humid evening. Jessica lingered after Dad left, insisting on organizing the kitchen with a clatter of pans. "You've done enough, dear," she said, patting my shoulder like I was a child, her touch sparking irritation. I'd been juggling college papers and sibling schedules, my hands rough from scrubbing dishes, and her interference felt like a theft of my authority. She rearranged the pantry, chattering about meal plans, her voice a relentless hum that frayed my nerves. Dad backed her, muttering, "She's trying to be part of the family," but her efforts disrupted our rhythm. Lily and Sam, puzzled by her attention, glanced at me for reassurance, their trust in me faltering. The anxiety swelled, my chest tightening during her visits, a silent battle against her overreach that I couldn't yet confront. Sometime later that summer, Dad's push for her involvement strained our sibling bonds. He started bringing Jessica more often, her visits doubling as he praised her motherly touch. One bright morning, as I helped Sam with a science project, she interrupted, "Let me take over, Lauren," her tone dismissive. Sam hesitated, his eyes seeking mine, and I stepped aside, my heart sinking as he followed her lead. Tom and Jake, home from college, noticed the shift, their protectiveness toward me cooling as Dad insisted, Jessica's here to stay. I felt betrayed, the unity we'd built after Mom's death cracking under her influence. My brother's focus drifted to Dad's approval, leaving me isolated in my role. The emotional toll was a quiet ache, a resentment I buried deep, my mind racing with ways to restore our family's harmony against her intrusion. Financial stress compounded my burden around that time. With Uncle Robert away, I managed the household budget, stretching my part-time earnings and his support to cover groceries and utilities in our modest Portland home. Jessica's frequent visits added strain. Extra food costs piled up, and she never contributed, expecting us to accommodate her. One week, I skipped a bus fare to afford bread, my hands trembling as I tallied expenses. Dad brushed off my concerns, saying, "Jessica's helping," but her help was a mirage, leaving me to shoulder the load alone. The financial pressure weighed heavily, my sleep disrupted by late-night calculations, and I began resenting her presence as a drain on our fragile resources. The responsibility, once a badge of pride, became a chain, tightening with each of her uninvited drops. Her patronizing tone deepened my unease that fall. During a family dinner in October, she addressed me, "You're doing great, sweetie, but I'll take over now," her smile condescending as she served potatoes. I forced a nod, my stomach churning with anger, but the kids giggled, drawn to her charm. Her words lingered, eroding my confidence, and I'd lie awake, replaying them, my anxiety spiking. She treated Tom and Jake with more deference, perhaps sensing their age, but with me, her tone was infantilizing, a constant jab at my leadership. The emotional strain left me questioning my worth, a wound that festered as her visits multiplied, pushing me toward a breaking point I couldn't yet articulate. The family tensions simmered beneath our daily life a few weeks later. Mom's memory lived in the quilt on the couch, a reminder of her love, but Dad's reconnection efforts were tainted by Jessica's dominance. One night, as I cooked, he argued with Tom over her role. "She's part of us now," Dad insisted, his voice firm. Tom shot back, "She's not Mom," his words a sting. I stepped in, my voice shaky. "She's overstepping." But Dad waved me off. "Give her a chance." The clash left a rift, my siblings divided, Lily and Sam warming to her, Tom and Jake aligning with me, while I bore the burden of keeping peace. The strain was a constant hum, my head throbbing with the effort to hold us together against her intrusion. Jessica's early mom acts grew more assertive a month after that. One crisp morning, she dropped by unannounced, bringing art supplies for the kids, her laughter filling the house as she directed their projects. "I'm here to support you all," she said, her eyes challenging me with a smile. I nodded, biting my tongue, but her presence threw off our routine. Homework sessions stalled, meals delayed. Dad encouraged her, "She's good for them," but I saw the confusion in Lily's gaze, the shift in Sam's reliance. My role as their protector wavered, my authority undermined, and the anxiety grew, a silent scream against her takeover. The house, once a haven, felt like a fortress under siege, her footsteps a drumbeat of disruption. My work suffered under the mounting pressure a short time later. As a college student with a part-time job at a local cafe, I balanced lectures and shifts, my hands cramped from typing papers. Jessica's visits disrupted my schedule. Late arrivals meant missed study hours, and my grades dipped, a professor noting, "You seem off lately." I masked the turmoil, but the stress piled up, my focus splintering. Dad's attention shifted to Jessica, his support absent, and I felt her presence as a thief of my stability. The job, a source of extra cash, became a struggle, my exhaustion a wall to progress, stoking my resolve to end her interference. The isolation deepened with her influence a few days after that. Friends from college, like Emily, grew distant as my availability shrank, their invitations fading. "You're always tied up," Emily said, her tone cooling. I tried to explain, but Jessica's constant presence loomed. Her complaints to mutual acquaintances, "She's so standoffish," spreading. I'd walk Portland's quiet streets at dusk, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement, feeling the loss of connection. Her takeover isolated me further, my siblings' trust shifting, and I began plotting how to reclaim our home. The loneliness was a silent companion, a spark for the strength I'd need to confront her overreach. By the time winter settled in, I was a shadow of the caregiver I'd been. My confidence eroded, sibling bonds strained, finances stretched, and family peace fractured. Jessica and Dad's pressure had built an unyielding wall around me, but within it grew a resolve I hadn't fully grasped. I'd sit in my room, the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through the curtains, plotting to end this intrusive takeover. The anxiety, the betrayal, the burden, they were forging a strength, a rebellion against the man who'd let his girlfriend rule us and the woman who'd seized my family. That strength would soon erupt, a fight I'd carry forward to lock her out and shatter her authority. As the summer I turned 22 stretched across Portland, Oregon, the strain from Jessica's presence coiled tighter in my chest, a tension that had been simmering since Dad, Michael, first brought her into our lives. Uncle Robert's home, with its creaky porch and the faint scent of pine wafting from the nearby forest, had been our refuge after Mom's passing, but her influence was creeping into every nook, challenging the harmony I'd fought to preserve. With Tom and Jake back from college and Uncle away on another work trip, I was the steady presence guiding Lily and Sam, but Jessica's frequent visits with her house key turned our days upside down. She treated my siblings as her own, stepping into a role I'd held since we were kids, and the pressure of her escalating control pushed me toward a breaking point. I held on to the hope of keeping our family intact, but beneath it, I was plotting to reclaim my authority against her overbearing ways. It began a few weeks into that warm season when Jessica let herself in one quiet afternoon. The soft click of the front door snapped me out of a rare moment of calm, and there she was, her heels tapping against the hardwood as she carried a stack of colorful workbooks. "I thought I'd help the kids with their homework," she announced, her voice bright but laced with an assumption that grated on me. I'd been hunched over my college laptop, the weight of summer courses pressing down, trying to draft a research paper due soon, and her uninvited entry threw my focus into disarray. She settled at the dining table with Lily and Sam, her tone overly sweet as she corrected their math, overriding my approach of letting them learn through struggle. My concentration splintered, the paper left half done, and the academic setback gnawed at me, a B slipping to a C as professors noted my distraction. The frustration simmered, fueling a quiet resolve to push back against her meddling. A couple of months later, as the season turned to a crisp August, Dad's defense of her widened the rift with my brothers. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden streaks through the windows, Jessica lingered after a family meal, offering to supervise the kids' chores. Dad nodded with approval, saying, "She's family now, let her in." Tom and Jake, usually my steadfast allies against Dad's past absences, hesitated but joined her, folding laundry while I stood aside, my hands empty. The betrayal cut deep. My brothers, who'd once stood with me through tough times, now drifted toward Dad's favor, their trust in me thinning as they chatted with Jessica about college life, leaving me out. I felt the distance grow, a cold space between us, and the resentment brewed, a quiet ache that deepened my isolation. Her presence was a wedge, and I began plotting how to restore our sibling unity against her encroaching influence. Household chores piled up around that time, overwhelming me as Jessica shirked any real responsibility. With Uncle Robert away, I'd taken on cooking, cleaning, and laundry, my days a relentless cycle to keep our Portland home running. Jessica would drop by, her help limited to wiping a countertop or stacking a dish, then leaving the heavy lifting to me. One dreary day in September, I returned to find the kitchen a disaster after she'd cooked with the kids. Pots caked with sauce, flour dusting the floor, and no effort to clean. I scrubbed late into the night, my hands raw from the effort, while she chatted with Dad on the phone, oblivious to the mess. The burden grew, my energy sapped by the uneven load, and I started resenting her avoidance as a drain on my strength. The house, once a shared effort, felt like my solitary burden, pushing me to reclaim control from her idle presence. Her oversight disrupted my college life a short time after that. I'd carved out a study nook in the living room, my textbooks and notes spread across the table, when Jessica breezed in one afternoon, insisting on tutoring Lily. "You need a break, Lauren," she said, her tone dismissive, shooing me away as she took over. My focus shattered, a midterm paper deadline looming, and I retreated to my room, the stress mounting as I scrambled to catch up. My grades slipped further, another C on a quiz, as professors remarked on my scattered attention, and the academic pressure weighed heavily. Dad supported her, saying, "She's easing your load," but her interference stole my peace, leaving me to wrestle with missed lectures and looming deadlines. The disruption fueled a determination to shield my education from her meddling, a quiet fire igniting within. The family tension escalated one chilly evening a few weeks later. Mom's memory lingered in the quilt she'd sewn, draped over the couch, a silent testament to our past, but Jessica's dominance tainted Dad's reconnection efforts. As I prepared dinner, he argued with Jake over her role. "She's part of us now," Dad insisted, his voice firm. Jake snapped, "She's not replacing Mom," his words a sharp jab. I stepped in, my voice trembling. "She's overstepping," but Dad cut me off. "She's trying." The clash left a divide, Lily and Sam drawn to her charm, Tom and Jake aligning with me, while I bore the burden of maintaining peace. The strain was a constant pulse, my head aching with the effort to hold us together against her intrusion, a tension that tested my patience daily. Jessica's mom act grew more pronounced a month after that. One bright afternoon, she arrived with craft supplies, her laughter echoing through the house as she guided Lily and Sam through a project. "I'm here to support you all," she said, her eyes daring me to object with a tight smile. I nodded, swallowing my frustration, but her presence stalled our routine. Homework sessions derailed, meals delayed as she commandeered the table. Dad encouraged her. "She's good for them." But I saw the shift in Sam's reliance, the confusion in Lily's gaze as they looked to her instead of me. My role as their protector wavered, my authority undermined, and the anxiety surged, a silent cry against her takeover. The house, once a haven, felt like a stage for her performance, her every move a challenge to my leadership that I couldn't ignore. My work at the cafe took a significant hit under this growing pressure. I'd balanced shifts and studies, my hands aching from pouring coffee and wiping counters, when Jessica's visits threw off my schedule. Late arrivals meant rushed prep, and my tips dwindled as I scrambled to cover. A manager pulled me aside one day, saying, "You're slipping, Lauren, pick up the pace." And the stress mounted, my focus fracturing under the strain. Dad's attention fixated on Jessica, his support absent as he praised her efforts, and I felt her presence as a thief of my stability. The job, a lifeline for extra cash to support the household, became a grind, my exhaustion a wall to progress, stoking a resolve to end her interference and reclaim my balance. The isolation deepened with her influence a short time later. Friends from college, like Emily, grew distant as my availability shrank, their invitations fading into silence. "You're always caught up with family stuff," Emily said one day, her tone cooling with distance. I tried to explain, but Jessica's constant presence loomed, her comments to mutual friends. She's so withdrawn and unapproachable, spreading like wildfire. I'd walk Portland's quiet streets at dusk, the city lights reflecting off wet sidewalks, the patter of rain a lonely soundtrack, feeling the loss of connection. Her takeover isolated me further, my siblings' trust shifting toward her, and I began plotting how to reclaim our home from her grasp. The loneliness was a silent companion, a spark for the strength I'd need to confront her overbearing ways. The emotional toll weighed heavily around that time. I started noticing the strain in my reflection, dark circles under my eyes, a tightness in my shoulders as the pressure mounted. One night, after a long day of juggling chores and studies, I caught myself staring at the ceiling, the weight of Jessica's dominance pressing down. My appetite waned, meals left untouched as anxiety knotted my stomach, and I leaned on late-night tea to calm my nerves. The isolation from friends and the shifting dynamics with my siblings left me adrift, a quiet ache that fueled my determination. I began sketching plans in my mind, ways to push back, the betrayal and burden forging a strength I hadn't yet fully embraced. By the time the leaves began to fall that autumn, I was a shadow of the caregiver I'd been. My confidence eroded under Jessica's oversight, sibling bonds strained by Dad's allegiance, work faltered under the pressure, and family peace fractured. Jessica and Dad's pressure had erected an unyielding wall around me, but within it grew a resolve I hadn't fully grasped. I'd sit in my room, the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through the curtains, the distant sound of traffic a muted hum, plotting to end this growing strain. The anxiety, the betrayal, the burden, they were forging a strength, a rebellion against the man who'd let his girlfriend rule us, and the woman who'd seized my family. That strength would soon erupt, a fight I'd carry forward to lock her out and shatter her authority. As the crisp breeze of early autumn swept through Portland, Oregon, the tension from Jessica's overreach had reached a breaking point. A pressure that had been building since Dad, Michael, reintroduced her into our lives months earlier. Uncle Robert's home, with its cozy living room light and the soft rustle of leaves outside, had been my refuge, a place where I'd struggled to hold our family together after Mom's passing. But her dominance was infiltrating every space, turning our sanctuary into a battlefield as the household adjusted to Tom and Jake's return from their summer jobs and Uncle's ongoing work trip. The dinner that altered everything came after a particularly harsh encounter. Her insult about Mom and her audacious bedtime command sparking a clash I could no longer contain. This breaking point unleashed a torrent of family fallout, testing my resolve, but it also ignited my rebellion to lock her out and shatter her authority. It began a few weeks into that golden season when we invited Dad and Jessica for dinner. The kitchen hummed with the savory scent of roasted chicken, a meal Tom and Jake had crafted with care, the table adorned with our worn but treasured dishes, a rare night of unity amid our challenges. Dad arrived with Jessica, her smile strained as she carried a store-bought pie, her heels clicking with an air of entitlement, and the evening started with tentative laughter as we tried to bridge the divide. But as we ate, Dad made a crude remark about our past hardships, and Jessica, emboldened by the moment, added a cutting insinuation about Mom's decisions before her death. "She might have managed better with some real support," she said, her tone laced with a judgment that pierced the room. The silence was deafening, my siblings' faces tightening with suppressed anger, and I felt a surge of rage that I fought to keep in check. We escorted them out after that, the air thick with unspoken resentment, and later, gathered in the dim glow of the living room, Tom, Jake, and I processed the hurt, reaching Uncle Robert with a tense, late-night call. The uncertainty of our next move loomed large, a shadow over our fragile peace. The next afternoon, a few days later beneath a cloudy sky, the clash erupted with full force. With my brothers occupied at their jobs, I picked up the younger ones from school, their chatter a brief reprieve, only to return home and find Jessica in our kitchen, her presence a jolt since she'd let herself in with her key. She'd come to apologize on Dad's behalf, claiming he was too ashamed to show his face. "He's devastated about last night," she said, her voice syrupy but her eyes dodging mine, sipping coffee she'd brewed without asking. I sent the kids to their rooms to spare them the tension and confronted her, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Your comment about Mom was inappropriate and disrespectful. It hurt us deeply." She laughed it off, waving a hand as if it were trivial, but I pressed, "We won't accept that kind of disrespect again." Then she smirked, "Aw, it's so adorable you think you're in charge here." Her words a patronizing slap. Though I tried to remain composed, her attitude persisted, treating me like a child as I turned to prepare dinner, her dismissal stoking a quiet fury within. Later that evening, as the clock neared 10 and the house grew hushed, the breaking point crashed down. Jessica had lingered, fussing over the younger ones in the living room, where they watched a show, their usual bedtime approaching. "Okay, my dears, time for bed," she chirped, her stepmom tone grating against the stillness. They glanced at me, their confusion a mirror to my own, and I shrugged, letting them retreat since it aligned with their routine. But then, as I scrubbed pots in the kitchen, she looked up from her phone at the island and said, "You too, hun." The words hung in the air, absurd and insulting. I was 26, a college student and caregiver, not her subordinate. "What?" I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief as the sponge slipped into the sink. She tutted, "It's getting late, time for bed," her tone firm and unyielding. The audacity stunned me, a boundary crossed after months of her overreach, and my patience, stretched to its limit, finally shattered. I gave her the benefit of the doubt initially, wondering if it was a poorly timed jest, but her insistence revealed her true intent. "I think it's time you went home," I said, my voice low but resolute, hoping to end the farce. She persisted, "Go on to bed," still playing the matriarch, her laugh mocking my authority. I explained, "I feel disrespected being spoken to like that. I'm an adult and you need to take me seriously. This isn't a game about my family." Her response was a chuckle. "It's so cute when you act like you're grown," adding, "You're throwing a tantrum, so rebellious." Her words dripping with condescension. The patronizing barrage opened a floodgate, and my anger, long suppressed, boiled over into a fire I couldn't contain. "You have 5 minutes to get your things and leave this house," I declared, my words slicing through her laughter like a knife. She scoffed, sauntering toward the bathroom with a casual air, muttering under her breath, "No wonder Michael calls you a frigid little priss," her voice fading into the hall. While she was in the bathroom, I seized my chance. Her handbag and keys lay neglected on the couch, her keyring a chaotic tangle of metal. Knowing she wouldn't notice right away amid her clutter, I deftly removed our house key, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I retreated to my room, heart pounding in my ears, and heard her leave about 20 minutes later, the door slamming with a finality that reverberated through the quiet house. The next morning, her texts flooded my phone, a panicked flurry about the missing key. I replied calmly, "I took it," and she fired back, calling me a brat, threatening to tell Uncle Robert and my brothers. I stayed composed. "I'm at work. Call me at 4 if you want to talk or bother my brothers, but they're tied up too, so good luck." Her response dripped with scorn. "Stop pretending you're an adult," insisting the younger ones were hers to care for, and this was unsafe. Her words a desperate bid to reclaim control. My final text was a firm boundary. "This is the last I'll say. You've disrespected me and my brothers, ignoring my efforts to communicate. There's little chance you'll get that key back. This isn't helping your case. Call it 4, or don't." She rambled on, Her messages, a chaotic mix of accusations and pleas, then unleashed a storm on my brother's phones and texted Uncle Robert, her outrage a digital whirlwind. I'd given Tom and Jake a brief heads up, but they didn't know the full story, and Uncle was unaware. As I write this, the situation unfolds, but I'll fill them in if needed. I don't doubt her care for the younger ones. Uncle trusted her with a key, but her behavior crossed a line. Her stepmom act feels hollow, and while I'd welcome her help if she respected us, her dismissal sparked my defiance. This clash was a turning point, a rebellion against her rule, and I braced for the fallout that would test my strength. The fallout brought fresh challenges a few days later under a dreary drizzle. Jessica's allies, including a talkative neighbor she'd charmed, spread rumors that I'd overreacted, painting me as an unstable hothead. At a local coffee shop, a friend of Tom's sidestepped me, murmuring, "Heard you went off on Jessica," the judgment cutting deep. The social isolation grew, my name whispered about at the community center, and I avoided the park where Lily played, the stairs following me like shadows. Dad's anger compounded the strain. He called that evening, his voice a frigid blade. "You've gone too far, Lauren," severing the last thread of emotional support I'd clung to. The sudden withdrawal left me exposed, my usual anchor gone, and I leaned on Uncle Robert's distant reassurance via a brief text, his faith in me a fragile lifeline. Sibling confusion strained our unity around that time. The younger ones, bewildered by Jessica's absence, asked, "Why isn't she here anymore?" Their voices tinged with uncertainty as they hovered near me for answers. Tom and Jake stood by my side, but the tension simmered. Jake grumbled, "This is throwing the kids off," his frustration brushing against me. I explained her disrespect calmly, detailing the bedtime incident, but the divide persisted, their trust in our family structure wavering as they processed the shift. The emotional toll was a heavy shroud, my nights restless with their questions and my own doubts, fueling a determination to shield them from further disruption and restore our balance. The family tension escalated a short time after, one rainy evening in November. Uncle Robert returned, his chuckle over the phone a brief balm as he said, "She tried to put you to bed?" But the situation remained fragile. Dad confronted me in person a few days later, his unannounced visit marked by a tense knock, his voice sharp. "You embarrassed Jessica. Return her key." I stood my ground. "She disrespected us with that comment about Mom and ordering me to bed." And he stormed off, his silence a barrier between us. The rift deepened, the younger ones caught in the middle, Lily whispering, "Are we in trouble?" And I felt the isolation grow, a quiet strength budding within as I planned my next defense. Jessica's reaction spiraled further a week later. Her texts turned into voicemails, her voice shrill. "You can't keep my key. It's unsafe for the kids." I ignored them, but the harassment spread to social media, where a friend of hers posted, "Lauren's lost it," gaining traction among local circles. The public shaming stung, my reputation dragged through the mud at a neighborhood event, and I steered clear of familiar haunts, the whispers a constant echo. Dad's support vanished, his calls ceasing, and I relied on Uncle Robert's steady guidance, his trust a faint beacon. The isolation was a persistent companion, but it fortified my resolve to stand against her. The sibling dynamics shifted uneasily around that period. Tom tried to mediate, suggesting, "Maybe we should hear Dad out," but I shook my head. "She crossed a line we can't ignore." Jake backed me, yet the younger one's confusion lingered. Sam asking, "Did Jessica leave because of me?" tugging at my heart. I reassured them, explaining her behavior, but the uncertainty persisted, their trust in me tested by the upheaval. The emotional burden grew, my sleep fragmented by their concerns, and I began reinforcing our routine with extra care, a quiet strength emerging from the chaos to guide us forward. The community backlash intensified a short time after. At a school event, a parent I'd known for years averted her eyes, murmuring about family drama, the rumor mill fueled by Jessica's allies. My social circle shrank, invitations drying up, and I felt the weight of their judgment at every turn. Dad's withdrawal left a void, his absence a stark contrast to his earlier push for reconciliation, and I turned to Uncle Robert's occasional calls, his support a thread to hold on to. The isolation was a constant ache, but it steeled my determination to protect my family from her influence. By the time the first frost dusted Portland's streets, the breaking clash had ignited a war. The rumors, Dad's abandonment, the sibling strain, they were a triad of pain, but also a catalyst. I'd sit with Tom and Jake, their support a flicker of hope, strategizing how to safeguard our home. Jessica and Dad believed they could break me with guilt and force, but I was done being ruled. This was the moment I'd lock her out and shatter her authority, a fight I'd carry forward no matter the cost. As the damp chill of late autumn draped itself over Portland, Oregon, the aftermath of my stand against Jessica left me standing in a solitary outpost, the echoes of her banishment reverberating through the fractured remnants of our family. Uncle Robert's home, with its familiar scent of wood polish wafting from the furniture and the gentle patter of rain tapping against the window panes, had once been my sanctuary, a place where I'd poured my heart into preserving harmony for my siblings after Mom's passing. But that harmony was now a distant memory, eroded by Dad, Michael, turning his back on me with a coldness that chilled the air. With Tom and Jake settling into their daily rhythms after summer jobs, and Uncle still away on an extended work trip, I bore the full weight of protecting the younger ones. But the relentless pressure from Jessica's allies and Dad's fury pushed me to the edge of my endurance. My decision to enforce her exclusion had carved a hard line in the sand, and the challenges that followed, harassing calls, workplace scrutiny, and the overwhelming demands of sibling care, tested my limits like never before. This was my lone defense, a fierce struggle to shield my family and reclaim my autonomy, laying the groundwork for a strength that would ultimately shatter her authority for good. It began a few days after that stormy confrontation when Dad's silence turned into an oppressive void. His absence following our last heated exchange left a hollow space in our home, his disapproval a frigid shadow that seemed to linger in every corner. Uncle Robert, back briefly from his out-of-state assignment, stood by my side, his voice resolute as he declared, "She's not stepping foot in this house again," after I poured out the details of her overstep. But the reprieve was fleeting. Jessica's harassment erupted with a flood of calls, her voice cutting through voicemails with a shrill, "You can't keep me from the kids. It's dangerous." I blocked her number, but she pivoted to texts, each message a chaotic blend of pleas and threats that shattered my rare moments of calm. One evening, as I tried to relax with a worn novel, her ringtone pierced the quiet, her words, "You're destroying their stability," reverberating in my mind like a taunt. The intrusion wrecked my peace, my nerves frayed to a breaking point, and I began screening every call with a growing sense of dread, the constant disruption a stark reminder of her reach that stoked my resolve to hold the line against her. A couple of weeks later, work scrutiny from Dad's influence cast a dark, oppressive cloud over my daily routine. At my part-time job at a local bookstore, a manager pulled me into the cluttered stockroom, his expression clouded with concern. "We've had feedback about your lack of focus," he said, his tone cautious but firm, hinting at a call from Dad regarding family issues. The pressure intensified, my shifts were watched with hawk-like precision, my tasks dissected under a microscope, and a coworker leaned in to whisper, "Your dad's not happy with you." I stayed late into the night, reorganizing heavy shelves, my hands sore and blistered from the effort, but the threat of a formal warning loomed like a storm on the horizon. My job, a vital source of income to support the household, teetering on the brink of collapse. Dad's influence had seeped into my workplace, a calculated move to unsettle me, and I felt the vulnerability keenly, my confidence wavering under the strain, which only fueled a fierce determination to prove my worth against his meddling. Sibling care demands surged around that time, wearing me down to the point of exhaustion that seeped into my bones. With Uncle Robert's steadfast support, I'd barred Jessica from our home, but the younger one's needs multiplied with an intensity that caught me off guard. Lily's school projects required detailed guidance late into the night, her sketches demanding my full attention, while Sam's bedtime fears escalated, his sobs pulling me from restless sleep with a frequency that left me drained. One overcast afternoon, I spent hours hunched over Lily's desk, my back aching as I helped her craft a science fair entry, only for Sam to interrupt with a tantrum over a lost action figure, his cries echoing through the house. The workload doubled, my days a relentless marathon of cooking, tutoring, and offering comfort, leaving me with barely a moment to catch my breath or tend to my own needs. Tom and Jake pitched in when their schedules allowed, but their commitments to work and personal lives limited their availability, and I felt the crushing weight of their dependence. My energy sapped to a mere whisper. The exhaustion was a heavy mantle that draped over my shoulders, but it forged a quiet, unyielding resolve to shield them from the chaos Jessica had sown, a strength I leaned on to keep our family steady amid the storm. The pressure from Jessica's allies mounted a short time after, adding a layer of social strain that tested my resilience. A neighbor she'd won over, Mrs. Carter, dropped by with a forced smile, her words laced with judgment. "Jessica misses the kids. Why such hostility?" The subtle accusation stung like a slap, and at a community book fair a few days later, another of her friends leaned in to whisper, "You're being too harsh," the gossip spreading like wildfire through our tight-knit neighborhood. My social circle shrank visibly, invitations to coffee chats and local events drying up like leaves in winter, and I began avoiding the park where Lily played, the murmurs of disapproval following me like a persistent shadow. The isolation grew, my reputation smeared by their narrative, and I leaned on Uncle Robert's sporadic calls for solace, his trust in me a fragile lifeline that kept me grounded. The social strain was a persistent gnawing ache, but it strengthened my determination to defend our boundaries against the tide of her lingering influence, a resolve that grew with each passing day. Dad's wrath deepened the rift a few days later, his anger a tangible force that reshaped our family dynamics. He appeared unannounced one evening, his knock a sharp intrusion that shattered the quiet, his face flushed with a fury that darkened his eyes. "You've humiliated Jessica. Give her the key back," he demanded, his voice a low, menacing growl that filled the room. I stood my ground, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "She disrespected us with that comment about Mom and ordering me to bed like a child." And he stormed off, his silence a cold, impenetrable wall between us. The cutoff of his support left me exposed, my usual anchor ripped away, and I turned to Uncle Robert's steady guidance, his faith in my decisions a thread to cling to amidst the chaos. The emotional void was a deep, throbbing wound, a constant reminder of his abandonment, but it fueled my resolve to stand alone, a quiet strength budding within to face his disapproval head-on. Jessica's harassment escalated a week later, her persistence a relentless assault on my sanity. Her voicemails grew frantic, her voice cracking with, "The kids need me, you're being cruel beyond measure." And she enlisted a friend to leave handwritten notes at our door, each plea a dagger to my peace. I reinforced the locks with a sturdy deadbolt. The $20 cost a small sacrifice for safety, but the disruption triggered sleepless nights, my mind racing with her threats and the fear of her return. One shadowy evening, a figure loomed outside the window, and I jolted awake, my heart pounding as I checked every lock, the fear a new suffocating layer of strain that left me on edge. Uncle Robert suggested a restraining order, but the prospect of navigating court paperwork and appearances loomed as a daunting task, draining my already limited time and energy. Her relentlessness was a violation, a calculated campaign to unravel my spirit, and I began documenting every call and note, a quiet strength emerging within to withstand her assault and protect my home. Work tension grew a short time after, the pressure a tightening vice that threatened my livelihood. The manager's scrutiny tightened further, a revised schedule slashing my hours with a stern warning, "Prove your reliability or we'll reconsider your role." I stayed late into the night, organizing inventory with meticulous care, my hands calloused and aching from the effort, but a customer complaint about a delayed special order added a fresh wave of pressure. Dad's influence lingered like a dark cloud, a coworker confiding, "He's been talking to the owner about you," and the job threat loomed larger, my role, a source of pride and financial support, hanging by a fragile thread. The stress was a constant, oppressive hum, my focus fracturing under the strain, but it sharpened my resolve to maintain my independence, a quiet fire growing within to stand firm against his interference. Sibling care demands peaked around that period, the burden a relentless tide that tested my endurance. Lily's art project deadline loomed large, requiring detailed sketches that I guided her through late into the night, my eyes burning under the dim lamplight, while Sam's nightmares doubled in frequency, his sobs pulling me from restless sleep with a desperation that broke my heart. I crafted a new routine, my days a marathon of preparing meals, tutoring with patience, and offering comfort with a steady voice, but the exhaustion wore me thin. My hands trembled from fatigue, my voice hoarse from constant reassurance. Tom and Jake offered help when their schedules permitted, but their commitments to work and personal lives kept them away more often than not, and I felt the crushing weight of their dependence, a burden that pushed my limits to the brink. The strain was a heavy load that draped over my shoulders, but it forged a determination to shield them from the shadow Jessica had cast, a strength I relied on to keep our family united amidst the turmoil. The community backlash intensified a few days later, the judgment a bitter pill that deepened my isolation. At a school bake sale, a parent I'd once shared smiles with turned away, murmuring about family trouble under her breath, the rumors stoked by Jessica's allies spreading like a contagion. My social life withered, playdate invites for Lily drying up like autumn leaves, and I began avoiding the grocery store where familiar faces cast sidelong glances, the disapproval a constant echo in my ears. The isolation grew, my reputation tarnished by their narrative, and I leaned on Uncle Robert's rare visits for a semblance of support, his faith in me a faint beacon in the darkness. The social strain was a persistent, gnawing ache, but it fortified my resolve to defend our boundaries, a quiet determination growing with each encounter to protect our home from her lingering influence. The family dynamics shifted uneasily around that time, the tension a delicate thread ready to snap. Tom suggested cautiously, "Maybe we should talk to Dad and smooth things over." But I shook my head. She crossed a line we can't overlook. Jake nodded in agreement, yet the younger one's confusion lingered, Lily asking in a small voice, "Did we do something to make Jessica go?" tugging at my heartstrings with every word. I explained her disrespectful behavior with care, detailing the incident that led to her ban, but the uncertainty persisted. Their trust in me wavered by the upheaval. The emotional toll grew, my sleep fragmented by their questions and my own reflections, and I began reinforcing our bond with shared games and stories. a quiet strength emerging to guide us through the storm and restore our sense of togetherness. The workplace pressure mounted a short time after, the stakes rising with each passing day. A supervisor conducted a formal review, noting, "Your performance has dipped," and I worked overtime, arranging displays with precision, my legs aching from hours on my feet. A third complaint about a delayed shipment added to the strain, and Dad's influence cast a long shadow. A coworker whispering, "He's pressuring the boss about you." The job threat grew, my role, a source of identity and financial security, hanging by a fragile thread, and the stress was a constant, oppressive weight that tested my focus. The challenge sharpened my resolve to maintain my independence, a quiet fire burning within to stand tall against his interference, a determination that grew with every late night spent proving my worth. By the time the first snowflakes began to drift over Portland's streets, the lone defense had begun to reshape my path. The harassment, the work threats, the sibling strain, they were a triad of pain, but also a spark of transformation. I'd sit with Tom and Jake in the evenings, their support a steady glow in the dim light, strategizing how to fortify our home and protect our future. The quiet moments with the younger ones, their laughter over board games a brief respite, reinforced my purpose. Jessica and Dad believed they could crush me with guilt, pressure, and isolation. But I was done being their pawn. This was the dawn of a new stand, a resolve to lock her out and shatter her authority. A fight I'd carry forward with every ounce of my strength, building a life where their influence could no longer reach us. As the first snow melted into a gentle spring across Portland, Oregon, a new chapter unfolded for me. Lauren, a transformation born from the ashes of my battle against Jessica's dominance. Uncle Robert's home, with its warm hearth and the soft murmur of rain-soaked streets, had become a fortress of resilience, a place where I'd rebuilt my life with my siblings after Dad, Michael, turned away. The sting of his rejection and Jessica's banishment had faded, replaced by a quiet strength as Tom and Jake settled into their careers and Uncle returned from his work trips. I'd carved out a path forward, landing a promotion at a local nonprofit and enrolling in evening counseling courses. But the past wasn't done with me. Vicious online attacks from Jessica's allies surged, testing my resolve. This was my new reign, a triumph forged through adversity, and I stood firm against their lingering shadows, determined to build a future free from their imposed control. It began a few months after that frosty standoff when my career took a promising turn. At the nonprofit where I coordinated community programs, my latest project, a youth mentorship initiative, earned praise from the director, my organizational skills shining through months of hard work. I'd spend late nights at the office, the hum of my laptop a steady companion, drafting proposals that reflected my journey, empowering others as I'd empowered myself. The promotion to program manager came with a modest raise, allowing me to contribute to household expenses, a gesture of gratitude to Uncle Robert for his unwavering support. Evening courses at a community college introduced me to counseling, my studies delving into family dynamics and trauma recovery, a passion sparked by my own struggles. Professors like Dr. Harris commended my insightful case studies, and I envisioned leading support groups for families in crisis. The workload was intense, balancing shifts, classes, and home life, but it laid a foundation for a life I controlled, a stark contrast to the chaos Jessica had sown. Uncle Robert's presence became a cornerstone of my renewal. His home, cluttered with his fishing gear and faded family photos, turned into a haven where we'd share stories over dinner. He'd listen as I recounted work victories, his gruff laugh a rare light breaking through my past. One rainy evening, he handed me a letter from Mom, tucked away for years, her words about my strength bringing tears to my eyes. "You've always had this in you," he said, his voice soft. The bond we'd deepened, tempered by Dad's rejection, was the bedrock of my recovery. We'd cook together, simple stews with fresh herbs, his kitchen a space of healing, a refuge from the turmoil Jessica had inflicted. His support was a quiet force, a steady hand that fueled my determination to leave her influence behind, a legacy of care they could never touch. The online attacks erupted with a ferocity that caught me off guard a short time later. In early spring, I created a LinkedIn profile to network for my counseling goals, posting about a community workshop I'd organized. Within days, notifications flooded in. Trolls, likely spurred by Jessica's circle, had targeted me. A post from a hidden account twisted our family history, branding me a heartless daughter who abandoned her dad. Comments poured in. "Ungrateful tyrant! Ruined her father's peace!" The malice was a bitter echo of their past manipulations, and my chest tightened with the sting of their reach. I'd thought her banishment had ended this, but her allies had resurrected it with a vengeance, a digital assault I hadn't anticipated. The harassment was a new battlefield, a test of the fortitude I'd fought to reclaim, and I braced myself with a steely resolve. The doxing heightened my vulnerability a few weeks after that. One unsettling night, a troll comment on a forum exposed our address, captioned with a menacing, "This is where the rebel hides." My breath caught, the threat a cold grip on my heart as I stared at the screen. I reported it frantically, but the damage was swift. Unfamiliar cars idled outside, and a package with a cryptic note arrived, its intent chilling. Uncle Robert and I packed in a hurried panic, moving to a safer apartment in a quieter Portland neighborhood, the relocation a whirlwind of boxes and fear. The cost drained my savings, forcing me to pause my courses, and the constant vigilance, checking locks, peering through curtains, wore me thin. The exposure was a profound violation, a reminder of their power to haunt me, yet it hardened my resolve to stand unbowed against their reach. I fought back against the digital onslaught with fierce determination a short time later. At work, I collaborated with IT to secure my online presence, deleting personal posts and locking accounts, but the attacks persisted with ruthless tenacity. One afternoon, a manipulated video surfaced on an obscure site, edited to show me arguing with Dad, captioned, "Family Destroyer." I reported it, my hands trembling with rage, but the platform's response lagged. Dr. Harris offered mentorship through the ordeal, his guidance a lifeline, and I channeled my anger into a class project on online abuse, earning high praise. The validation was a shield, but the troll's relentlessness tested my limits, a shadow over my achievements, pushing me to dig deeper into my resilience. My career advanced with a momentum that defied the chaos a month after that. The mentorship program won a local award, my name in the program a public vindication of my efforts. I pitched a family support initiative to the nonprofit, designing workshops for single-parent households, and they greenlit it with enthusiasm, a step toward my counseling dream. The workload was staggering, meetings, planning sessions, classwork, but it constructed a legacy of my own making. Uncle Robert celebrated with a homemade pie, his pride a quiet joy, and I felt the burden of Jessica's past control lift, replaced by a purpose they couldn't dim. The success was a triumph, a foundation for the future I'd battled to secure, a life crafted from the ruins of their dominance. The family dynamics shifted into a new balance a few weeks later. Dad and Jessica hadn't contacted us since the doxing, their silence a hollow victory tinged with relief. Uncle Robert overheard from a mutual friend that they'd moved to a suburb outside Portland, their influence waning like a fading echo. One gray morning, I spotted a friend of Dad's at the market, his glance fleeting but cold, a sign of their lingering narrative. Uncle Robert's brother, Uncle James, called, his tone cautious. "Michael's still bitter," he admitted, but I see your fight." I thanked him but kept my distance, cherishing Uncle Robert's love and my siblings' support. Tom with his practical advice, Jake with his steady encouragement, as my true family. Their rejection had scarred me, but it unshackled me from their guilt-laden traps, a peace I'd fought to claim. The cost of my stand was a profound sacrifice that lingered a short time after. I'd lost Dad's approval, Jessica's intrusions, and the extended family's warmth, leaving a void that echoed with their absence. My career and studies were my lifelines, but the doxing imposed a relentless strain, a shadow over my progress. I'd walk Portland's rain-drenched streets, the skyline a distant promise, feeling the weight of their rejection, but also the growth it had nurtured. Therapy with a counselor, Ms. Carter, became a sanctuary, her sessions unraveling the guilt with gentle persistence. "Their choices aren't your burden," she'd affirm, and the truth slowly anchored me. Dad's early care had warped into control, but Uncle Robert's belief rebuilt me where he'd faltered. This was a reign forged in unyielding strength, a testament to enduring against relentless odds. If I could share one piece of advice, it's this. Don't let family impose unwanted roles, set firm boundaries. Jessica and Dad tried to cast me as a child, wielding their authority as a weapon, but I learned my worth isn't theirs to define. Stand tall against their pressure, even when they deploy guilt and dominance, because your life is yours to shape. I waged that war, and it set me free. The struggle to break their hold was my hardest victory, a lesson in claiming my destiny with unwavering courage. The lesson I carry is clear. Power lies in rejecting control to build your future. I sacrificed Dad's love, Jessica's meddling, and family ties, but I gained a self I honor. The doxing, the isolation, the battles, they sculpted me into someone who defies subjugation with grace. Victory wasn't just locking her out, it was constructing a life where their influence couldn't reach. I'd repeat it, not for vengeance, but for the woman I've become. The one Uncle Robert always saw, the one who reigns in her new domain. This is my legacy, a monument to resilience, and I embrace it with pride. Now, I turn to you, my community of strength. I've shared my rise from pain to power, a journey of defiance and renewal, and I invite your stories. Have you overcome imposed control to forge your own path? Share your tale in the comments. I read each one, and they inspire my resolve. If this journey resonates, like and subscribe for more narratives of triumph. Let's build a network of resilience, one courageous story at a time. Thank you for being here, for listening with open hearts, and for reminding me I'm part of something greater. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue to rise together.